Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my page 112 tag video for May 2022. If you're paying an obsessive amount of attention to my videos, which I can only assume only I'm doing, you might notice that I am in the exact same getup as my last video, my Friday Reads video, because I am, in fact, filming this on the same day. Which I don't usually, film two videos on the same day, but I have a little bit of a head cold, and I don't know if perhaps my voice is going to give out or not later in the week. Honestly, it might not. I don't know if this cold is going to get that bad, really, but it's kind of my excuse, I suppose, because I am so excited. I'm always excited to sit down and make these videos, so let's get to it. The page 112 tag was brought to BookTube by Sean at Sean the Book Maniac. He based it off of a French literary prize wherein they comprised the long list of said prize of novels solely by reading page 112 of the books in contention, which means you have no context for the beginning of the story and can only go based on the quality of the writing on that one page, which I think is known or understood or, assumed to be far enough in the book that maybe it's not quite as polished as the first few pages that, those are the ones that sell the editors. But anyway, hopefully it'll still be good on page 112. And anyway, I have been using this tag since COVID started to slowly cull my physical unread TBR shelves. I take out three pieces of paper from this handy dandy Books and Cats mug. These pieces of paper are all of the unread titles on my shelves that I acquired in 2021 or before that I don't have other plans to read for other, TBR reasons this year. So anyway, I take out three at random, and then I read the three page 112 tags and share them with you, then give my thoughts, and then pick one of the books to join my May TBR. Hopefully I will give ample consideration to the parameters of the tag where I judge based on the quality of the writing, but to be completely honest, I am in dire straits with my May 2022 reading. I am really running headlong against the BookTube prize deadline. I'm further behind with this quarterfinals round than I have been before, so I have to give a lot of precedent to that sort of reading. So if I could find a short book in here, it might be the one that's going to go on my TBR. So we're going to see. But anyway, here I go, the exciting part of picking the three books, starting with book number 1. I'll try for, maybe they stick together too, but okay, let's go here. All right. Oh, The Stolen Child by Keith Donahue. This is one of my more recent, not purchases, but acquisitions, because this was a birthday gift from my sister, and she has been, she read it and loved it and was so excited to suggest it to me, so I almost feel like I should read this one because I'm sure that she is wondering why the hell it's taken me so long to get to the one book that she suggested to me, and it's just because my TBR is so long. So anyway, this might be the month. Okay, and now for book number 2, messing things up a bit in here. Okay. I don't even know where I was, like if I can hopefully find something slightly different, but here's a title, okay. Oh, The Kinship of Secrets by Eugenia Kim. I think this is another one of my more recent acquisitions that I'm sure I got from a library book sale. I assume in 2021. I'm not recalling having it on my list before then. I guess we shall see. I know this is a slightly more realist fiction than the first book I think I picked out, which is a little more fantastical, and I believe it is Asian inspired, which perhaps fits this month's theme of Asian Pacific Heritage Month, so, that could be good. And finally, we'll go for book number 3. Part of me is hoping it'll be a book I already chose in previous years for the page 112 tag, so I don't have to do as much post-production, but I don't know. Just, you know, putting my hand in here and seeing what happens. Okay. Oh boy, these really stick together. Okay, pick something. Pick, okay, here we go. Pick something. Asymmetry by Lisa Halliday. I must have some sort of sixth sense because I'm sure this is another very recent library bookstore haul that I did last year, I think. Very new acquisition. Similar realist fiction, I think, maybe a little more like highbrow ideas based, but shorter too. I think this might be the shortest one, so we might see what happens coming up after this. Okay, you have now seen me pick all three of these books off of my shelves, and I will be back to you shortly to read the page 112s and give my thoughts on them, so stay tuned. Okay, I'm back, starting with book number 1, The Stolen Child by Keith Donahue. She appeared at my side, redolent of jasmine, her scent betraying her stealth. A quick sideways glance and an even briefer smile, then we both resumed our inspection of the lawn and the dark woods beyond. Her black dress was trimmed at the collar, and cuffs in white, for she followed the smart fashion, twice removed from the haute couture of Mrs. Kennedy. But Tess Wodehouse managed to copy the style without looking foolish. Perhaps it was her quiet poise as we stood at the rail. Any other girl my age would have felt the necessity to speak, but she left it to me to decide the moment of conversation. It was nice of you to come. I haven't seen you since when? Grade school? I'm so sorry, Henry. I flicked my cigarette into the yard and took a sip from my drink. I heard you once at a recital downtown, she said, 4 or 5 years ago. There was a big to-do afterward with a ranting lady in a red coat. Remember how gently your father treated her? As if she weren't crazy at all, but a person whose memory had come undone. I think my daddy would have told her to buzz off, and my mother probably would have punched her on the nose. I admired your father that night. While I remembered the woman in red, I had not remembered Tess from that night, had not seen or thought of her in ages. In my mind, she was still a little tomboy. I set my glass down and invited her with a sweeping gesture to a nearby chair. With a demure and becoming grace, she took the seat next to me, our knees nearly touching, and I stared at her as if in a trance. She was the girl who had wet her pants in 2nd grade, the girl who had beaten me at the 50-yard dash in 6th grade. When I went off to the public high school in town, she took the bus to the Catholic girls' school in the other direction, vanished. Those intervening years had shaped her into a beautiful young woman. Do you still play piano? She asked. I hear you're up in the city college. Are you studying music? This was an interesting one to me because there's a lot of backstory in it. I feel like there's very little that's happening in the present. But I think it's a clever way for Donahue to put in that backstory because it's not someone, well, not someone entirely just standing off into space saying, I remember such and such. But it's, you know, interspersing it with a conversation in the here and now with this person that apparently the protagonist hasn't seen in several years. So, you know, the immediate conversation gives way to, you know, remembrances of the past, at least mostly. I do kind of feel like he went off on a little bit of ramble, I guess, on his own a bit in new directions. It barely said anything in the here and now of the scene, but maybe I'm being nitpicky. Speaking as someone who writes a lot of backstory and exposition, or maybe too much herself. So, yeah, that's interesting. I do feel like some of it is a little, I don't know, maybe I'm just being picky, but like, you know, the language is so stereotypical, like staring at her as though you're in a trance or something. It's, I don't know, I mean, maybe it's fine because obviously he doesn't know this person anymore, so he's kind of putting her like on a bit of a pedestal or, you know, painting her in a one-dimensional sort of way, which is fine for this scene. But yeah, I mean, I still found it interesting, you know, it was a, you know, a fun scene to imagine at the piano recital and talking about, well, I mean, his dad seems like a really nice guy. That's somebody I'd want to know who doesn't, you know, brush off somebody who's, you know, annoying, I suppose. You know, it's easier to, you know, admire that sort of behavior from afar. I thought it flowed well for the most part. Could definitely be interested to see where this goes. Although I guess the present day scene is a little confusing to me. Like, it seems like in the beginning he didn't know she was there, but then she was there, but then they continued inspecting something together. But again, that could just be context from before. Maybe they were inspecting something and then she left and then she, came back and he only knew because of the scent or something. I'm wondering what they're inspecting. This is supposed to be a little speculative, I think, so when you're looking into the deep woods, hopefully maybe that'll come back later or earlier in the story. We shall see. Book number 2 is The Kinship of Secrets by Eugenia Kim. A girl should not be separated from her purse. She said nothing to prevent the outburst of frustrated tears. The threat of childish tears made her reassess her attitude, and she took a few surreptitious big breaths, lips tight. She felt stubborn, ugly, and closed up, far from the feeling of freedom from the previous week, which she'd mistakenly attributed to the Kimses being rich. It wasn't that their generosity of things had opened up her heart to Sarah and her parents, and thus to herself. It was the generous attention she'd received in that house, from outings or being asked questions at the dinner table, to witnessing Sarah and her mother talk about clothes and shoes, in English, like girlfriends, her own opinion sought after, and an unprecedented privacy in her guest room that never would be invaded by an inquisitive mother who was too busy to keep track of her daughter except by snooping through her things. Moran sighed and did the right thing. "I'm sorry, Dad. I had so much fun, and they're so different from us." She noticed he was taking a circuitous route home. "I know. It is your first extended visit outside the house, so some adjustment is to be expected. They do live quite extravagantly, but they've been generous with us, too." He patted the steering wheel, and she remembered Dr. Kim had given them the car years ago, when they were thick into the dog and pony shows. It was rusted in places on the chrome bumpers, but without a single dent, and her dad had learned how to maintain the motor to keep it running reliably. "We just don't have that kind of money, and even if we did, much of it would still go to support your sister and your uncle's family and soul." Her dad was so measured in his speech, always thoughtful and distant, and so unlike Dr. Kim, who joked and hugged Sarah with ease. Calvin turned the Plymouth onto 13th Street, which led further away from their house. "We missed you," he said. "I missed you guys too," she lied. Their daily calls to check in had made her crabby and monosyllabic on the telephone. "How's Mom?" she said dutifully. "Making kimchi. Your mother was always a hard worker, and she's much happier these days having that teaching job." "I wish I was old enough to have a job. I could earn my own money and buy Mom a television." Moran had planned to ask him for a weekly allowance beyond the milk money, but her outburst had squandered that opportunity. I like this better on reread, I think. I was about to, give it a little bit of a pass because it's technically an advanced reader copy, so you never know what might have changed, but I like it a little better now. The beginning is a little rough, like speaking of, too much exposition, where we're really just inside of Moran's, it seems, head, where she's remembering just how it was, I think, to spend time with this Kim family. That's what I think is going on. It seems like they're very different from her own family. So she's in her head, and then it takes a pivot where she has to do the right thing, which I'm sure is context from before, and it seems like her father is upset with her for something. And he's, kind of putting on an authoritative air, I suppose, trying to get her back in line or back under his thumb. That's the impression I got. There's all this language of, you haven't been outside the house before, which I'm like, whoa, how young or old is this character to not be outside the house before? And then I really like the lines about taking the circuitous route home or that sort of thing, because that's Kim telling us, or showing us, I should say, that he's trying to elongate this conversation and this, I would say, power he has over her in the car where she can't go anywhere. That's my feeling about what those lines mean, and it's just a great way to get the point across. And yeah, he keeps on, putting in his lines about how the Kims are, a rich family, a nice family, but so different from us, although I think some of that was her talking. And there was some, I guess, background about their relationships and the Kims helping them out. And I really like the stuff, I guess, about Dr. Kim and Sarah, although that's all, exposition and not in the present day scene. I think so, yeah, a couple clunky lines, but I really liked it, and there's just a really interesting premise on this page where they're obviously a little bit impoverished, where they're saying even if we did have the money that the Kims have. We'd have to send it to family members who are presumably in need for some reason, and we don't have that money. And there's just talk about how it seems like their finances are a little strayed. So yeah, we have class clashes, which would be a really interesting, stomping ground for a book. I hope to see more of it in here. And finally, book number 3 is Asymmetry by Lisa Halliday. Alice was not the only one who'd sought out the same seat she'd sat in the day before, as though if they'd started over elsewhere, the long wait of yesterday wouldn't count. The man with the Muslim uncle had exchanged his economist for a laptop, whose screensaver was a photograph of himself with someone of identical complexion. They also had the same eyebrows, the same angle to their jawlines, the same brand of windbreaker, in which they stood with their arms around each other against a dramatically marbled sky. Behind them, brown mountains stretched into the distance, triangular summits intricately veined at the top with snow. Then an Excel document poured up from the bottom of the screen, replacing nature with a blinding blizzard of cells. Devon Flowers, Elizabeth Hammersley, Kanchan Kemenhandi, Cynthia Wolfe, Orlando Olson, Natasha Stowe, Ashley Brownstein, Hannah Filkins, Zachary Jump. Sometimes a name had to be repeated, and its owner discovered to have been in the men's room, or stretching his legs in the atrium, or asleep. Only once did someone fail to materialize at all, and the effect on the room was a kind of jarring collective consternation. Who was this AWOL Amar Jamali, and what reason could he have for standing up the American judiciary? And yet Alice envied Amar Jamali a little, desperate as she was to be somewhere else herself. Someone else herself. Emmanuel Gott, Connor Fleming, Pilar Brown, Michael Firestone, Kirill Drobulski, Abigail Cohen, Jennifer Vanderhoven. Now I have mixed feelings too, overall, but I liked this. I think it's so different in style than the other books. I think, kind of riffing off the title here, but I think that there's a couple of asymmetrical stories in this that are a little shorter and maybe a little more slant in the telling, or, quick to the bone, as it were. Taking that scene, for example, like I'll stop speculating now, but the whole thing about it is that there's a lot of detail, but it's about the scene itself. It's not about Alice, our protagonist's life in particular. The only thing we get about her life is that she doesn't want to be where she is. And it's really told within, the context of the scene where, it looks like this man from the American judiciary, we're getting all the information on the page too, so huzzah, but he's reading off names of people who have to report themselves. And one person is AWOL, and like within that, flow of the scene, that's when we get that one moment of, internal thought process about how she doesn't want to be there. But otherwise, I mean, I know this stuff isn't really, it might not be that important to, the emotional catharsis or pathos of the story. But, I kind of like all the details too, like looking at the screen and how it changes from the backdrop to the Excel sheet. I don't know, it's just those granular details of life and living in this very specific and either drab or perhaps tense scene. That, I don't know, I appreciate that sort of stuff too. Maybe that's the type of story this is. Or at least, it adds that sort of stylistic flair to the story. And I do think it is a shorter story, like that there's these asymmetrical, like, short stories in this collection, I think. And I'd say the setting is certainly interesting as well, Obviously Alice seems to have to answer for herself somehow in a judiciary setting, or someone close to her has to answer themselves in that setting. So we don't know anything of the details of that, like what she's up against, but it does certainly seem maybe dire, but also it really, I think it's the drollness of the bureaucracy of waiting for, being called up to like some sort of trial or hearing or what have you. So yeah, I still like this, even though it's mostly sort of scene-building detail rather than much about the character. And what the hey, I think I'm gonna go with it, with number 3, Asymmetry by Lisa Halliday. This could end up to bite me in the butt, this sort of, stylistic sort of storytelling. It could be compelling, or it could be gruesome, and just not as engrossing as, you know, the more traditional emotional tales, at least that we got on the other two page 112 tags. But it is technically the shortest book, if not by much. So hopefully that will make it easier for me to get through this month as well, when I have so much else on my plate. So we shall see how this goes. So that about covers it for me now. You can find the Goodreads links for all three of these books listed down below, as well as the playlist I have for my own TBR games video. So you'd find all of my page 112 tags and another TBR game that I play quarterly there. And in that vein, I also use this outro section to highlight another TBR game put out by another member of the BookTube community, just trying to show community support and also kind of, you know, position my page 112 tag in the TBR game sort of genre, just because that's kind of how I view it, as like a really fun way to be spontaneous for once in my reading, or somewhat spontaneous. Although this time what I feel like I have to do for this May is highlight a readathon I'm taking part in myself, which is the Maybe Midrash Readathon, which was started by Jason at Old Blues Chapter and Verse a couple of years ago. This year he's hosting solo, he's had co-hosts before, and his whole idea is to read seriously books, one book of fiction and one book of nonfiction pertaining to religion, like in a serious fashion. Not like some sort of like Christian fiction title, which is all about just, you know, affirming your right belief, but really challenging something deeper within religious belief or culture or that sort of thing. And I actually went ahead last week and posted my TBR video for this, you know, Maybe Midrash for this year. So I will post my video and Jason's videos down below. So yeah, a whole lot of reading that I'm hoping to get through in May. You know, the Maybe Midrash Readathon, this page 112 tag, and of course the most important one really, because I owe it to other people, is the BookTube prize, because I have to get my ballot out for Robert to get everything sorted. So yeah, in that vein, you'll see me next on this channel with my next upcoming Friday Reexam reading video, where hopefully I'll have good news to share about getting through some of my May TBR, so stay tuned for that. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.